Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this fireside chat about the future of contact center AI with Genesys and Google. My name's Chris Connolly. I'll be your host today during this fireside chat. If this is the first time you've heard about Genesys, we power about 25 billion interactions per year with customers of all shapes and sizes, from the very large to the very small. We're really happy to talk to you about the future of contact center today. And I'm joined by Anthony Pazimard, the head of conversational AI here at Genesys, as well as Steve Layden from Layden Consulting, an independent contractor that is in our industry. So as we get started, maybe Anthony, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, your history, and what do you do here at Google?
Hey, great to be here, Chris. So I'm Anthony Pazimard. I lead the conversational AI at Google, as you mentioned, and I've been at Google for almost 3 years now, and leading that team since around the beginning of this year. I've held various roles in cloud companies like Amazon and Salesforce. So most notably, I've been spending 4 years in the Service Cloud at Salesforce, which was a really interesting time, and I've witnessed the transition from my time there, which was in 2011 to 15 roughly, to now this massive transition, the contact center world where things are completely changing now, thanks to AI mostly. And I'm really happy to be part of that transformation and be here today to talk about it.
Fantastic. Well, I think we're going to have a great conversation today about some of these developments. Steve Layden, why don't you introduce yourself? What do you do, and what type of clients do you engage with?
Thanks, Chris, and thanks for having me on this fantastic fireside chat. Being out east here, it's great to see some warmer weather here in California where you're broadcasting from, so thanks for that. So yeah, we've been in business now 25 years as independent consultants in the industry. We have a big focus on contact center for mid to large enterprise clients. Most of them are in the either healthcare, higher education, financial services, publishing, and government segments. Those are the ones that we're really attracted to and are attracted to us. And we're really finding that this whole notion of customer experience is taking front and center now in our industry. And customers are really starting to realize that if they're not focused on some kind of customer experience to some or large degree, it could be potentially existential to their organization long term. So the competition is heating up, so to speak, and we're seeing a lot of that. And being one of 20 experts on a national website called BC Strategies, we're seeing a lot of that happen. And really, I'll just give you a quote here from a Walker study recently that by 2020, this time next year, customer experience will overtake product and price as the main driver. So with customer experience being so front and center, and of course contact center being on front end of most organizations for that experience, customers really need to be looking deeply at tools to help them augment current staff, as well as just engage and have a better KPI SLA, if you will. And we'll get into that, of course, as we have this chat.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic. And maybe this is a question to the audience. We're going to put a poll up right now just to really help us set the scene. This is a live engagement session. We are here. We will have questions live. So I've got my phone ready to receive questions. So if there's something that comes to mind during the discussion, please put it in the Q&A window. What we'll do is understand, we'll listen to those questions, try and get back to you live. But right now, there's a poll. We just want to get a sense of where you are in your journey. Are you at the start? Are you thinking about new requirements? Are you already selecting a vendor? Or are you maybe all the way through? You're live and you want to hear what the latest developments are. So we're going to have a look at that. And I guess what we're seeing come through right now is it's pretty evenly split across the board. Certainly people are looking to migrate. That's starting to rise to the top here. And there are some that are implementing. So great to see a diverse set in our audience today. So maybe, Steve, I'm going to ask you a question here.
Sure, Chris.
Compared to this time last year, what are the developments that you're seeing? Is this surprising to you, or on par with the type of conversations that you have?
Yeah, I think we're in this early adopter stage, and I think the poll is actually showing that. And interestingly, you've got these two major areas that AI has gotten a lot of traction with, and of course, first it's chatbots. And in the world of retail, I think we've seen, and in help desk, for example, too, I think we've seen chatbots take front and center and really be an area that people are engaged with and are comfortable with, But now, and I know we're going to have this as part of our discussion, but now that we have voice bots now taking front, and center stage now, I think the game is going to change pretty dramatically. So we're finding that customers need staff augmentation. They want to increase their SLAs. They want to increase their KPIs. They want to manage their abandoned call rates. And it's typically, there's a cost factor, obviously, that goes with staffing, with real estate. And those are the two major, dollar values of any organization. So how do we manage that? So again, exploring this new technology is pretty fascinating. So what we're looking to do is to also marry this new technology to areas that the customer is already engaged with. So for example, I've got my Galaxy Note, and daily, it's part of my life. I talk on it all the time, and I talk to Miss Google Voice, and she talks back to me and gives me directions and gives me information about what I'm looking for. And the response time is literally milliseconds. Thank you, Anthony and Google, for that. And that alone has me engaged with a voice bot, and it's very common for most mobile users. So why can't we take that to the next level as something that we're already using into a voice bot, or a voice chat bot now, if you will, in the voice arena? So as long as it's got that natural language element around it, I think the adoption will go quite quickly, and it will go mainstream quickly, Chris.
Fantastic. So maybe, Anthony, I want to dig into a couple of terms. We hear chatbots, we hear voice bots, we hear conversational AI, we hear automated speech processing. Can you just unpack that a little bit for us? What is this conversational AI that everyone's talking about?
Yeah, and so one of the important things, and that's what we're seeing here with doing our research, is kind of the winner here in that survey. I think the change here is voice. As you mentioned, Steve, people have done chat for a while, and we've had a product in market for several years. Dialogflow has been powering a lot of the virtual agents you see out there. But what's really changed in the voice channel, and what's important to understand, is that at some point a few years ago, we thought that the market would go chat and people didn't want to talk on the phone. Everybody say, people don't want to speak, they don't want to take the phone. It's actually untrue.
Right.
Over about 80% of the calls are contact with the brands are through phone and voice. So voice was really the frontier we had to cross. And as Steve mentioned, he's using his Galaxy Note, but we have new devices like the Google Home that have been in the home. We have a voice search on most Android phones right now. We have voicemail transcription on your phone automatically. We have transcription of videos on YouTube. All that technology that's going into understanding the voice is now paying off and being applied to CCAI, to contact center. Now we can actually understand what people are saying in short form in IVR or long form on the phone. And that's really what's changing, the driver of that change today in contact center, is that now that we can do it, the customers have the ability to change the equation and the balance between their operational costs and this customer satisfaction that they provide. Until now, they had to choose. Add more people, better satisfaction. Lower people, less satisfaction. Now they can do both. They can keep the number of people they have and still increase their customer satisfaction, because the voice technologies are there today, and thanks to a lot of research actually from Google.
And so let me just make sure I got this right. So all of those voice endpoints that are out there, all of the history, that is benefiting contact center AI in the IVR.
Correct.
Yeah?
Correct, exactly. When you say, I want to search for whatever movie or whatever news, this kind of language through a phone, which is oftentimes low quality, is used to power the models and the training and the research even. We have Google Brain, for example, RMI, that are doing a lot of research on those topics, publishing papers all the time about this. This is the kind of technology and usage from millions and millions of users that we're taking in and helping contact centers now.
And so for our audience, that also means that they get to sort of shorten their implementation cycles, right? Because they're able to leverage all that data. They're not having to train new models. It's straight in.
Exactly. The models we're providing are probably state-of-the-art models. There's a lot less tuning that you had in the past. In the past, you'd put a model out there and you had to tune it all the time. It was very costly, and you needed data scientists to do this.
Right.
Now we have our cloud speech-to-text API and our cloud text-to-speech API. Just call them out, and it will do the transcription for you. And when it's integrated in the contact center, either as part of an IVR or using a conversational AI like Dialogflow, or as part of Agent Assist to help agents, then it's out of the box, literally.
So this is one of the, I guess, the breakthrough technologies with Agent Assist. And I saw that Google made an announcement a couple of hours ago just
today. This is timely, yeah. This Fireside Chat is actually timely. We just announced this morning the GA of our Contact Center AI suite, which is mostly driven by the GA of our Agent Assist product. Right. Dialogflow was GA for several years. So the two together now go from virtual agent interaction to live agent interaction and powering those interactions through AI. And that's GA today. So. And
I guess for our audience that might not have heard of Agent Assist, what does that do? I know it sits inside the desktop, it really provides a coach. What are the types of things that we're expecting to see?
The main goal of Agent Assist is to really empower the agent to provide better service. And the way we do that is by listening in the live conversation between the customer and the human agent, do a live transcription of that conversation in real time, so it will display in the console the conversation. There's diarization, so who says what, and we just transcribe that. Out of that transcription, we can do a lot of things. Now we can use our NLU engine, the same one we have in Dialogflow, to detect intent and entities as part of that conversation and proactively propose documents or answers to the live agent, so they don't have to search, they don't have to lose any time searching, finding information, parsing documents, and they're guided and coached into what they need to answer to the customer. And that reduces the average handle time, which is a big metric that contact center are looking for. It also helps with call disposition because all those intents are captured, and at the end of the call, we'll reduce the call disposition by 10 to 15 seconds most of the time, which is in large call center can have a significant impact. And really allow also QA managers or team managers or even product owners to have a full view over the entire contact center of what's happening in the contact center, what are customers saying, what is the satisfaction level, are they happy at the beginning of the call, the end of the call, usually at the end of the call hopefully, and see if there's a higher first call resolution, for example, and things like that. So Agent Assist brings a lot of value to that.
Brilliant technology. I'm really excited. I think, Steve, you've seen some of this in your clients as well, where there's these new use cases. Maybe can you just talk us through a little bit about what are those new use cases for Agent Assist? Yesterday we were talking about healthcare and some of the different uses that this technology could provide. But what are you seeing in the wild?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. So, there's a couple of, use cases that, we've looked at so far. And, some of them are very simple to start. So, just to augment IVR and to create let's call it smarter IVR into the conversation and to get people engaged even more with self-service is really big because, we're now at an adoption stage where the customer base, the customers out there want to have self-service, okay? And we've proven that through online retail, okay? The number of users that are doing online retail today compared with 5 years ago is, obviously had skyrocketed. So, that being one example. We have another client that, from a use case point of view, really wants to take a full 30% of their environment for both chatbots and voice bots to actually front-end all transactions, okay? And they actually want to use the chatbots as part of web chat, okay? And to fulfill and to drive, to drive the customer to their website or to the app, if you will, and make that entire transaction without having to call the contact center, but using chat, in a live environment. So that will still be, of course, a component of the contact center. And then the other part being the voice bot to actually handle basic transactions without even having to go to a live rep. Okay, so a basic transaction would be, in this particular case, they want to do a rental of some equipment, and then the idea would be, is that particular equipment in stock? So the AI bot can actually look into the database, if you will, the big data in that sense, and find out if that particular piece is ready to rent. So it's quite interesting to see how, again, we can use AI and media along those lines in order to again, expand on the market. And obviously, it's always about how can I manage staffing levels, in an environment while I'm being pushed to, in this, again, this customer experience economy, let's call it, an era. How do we actually improve on KPIs and SLAs without blowing up our staffing models and costs that go, with our environment? So again, we're looking at, augmentation in order to help manage that and increase, as Anthony just said a little while ago, how do we improve on that SLA and still maintain the number of staff, or actually help manage the staff down to that degree too.
It's interesting you say that. So we see in some of our research at Genesis that average handle time is actually increasing, which is, a lot of the automation technologies have been put in place. And now we're in a world where handle times are going up, staffing levels aren't going up at the same rate. And we reference these SLAs, which are often service levels. I guess, Steve, just stick with you for a second. Are you seeing a difference in what is being measured now? Is it still the same old, 80-20, 90-30, or are people starting to shift to new metrics to measure the value of the contact center?
Yeah, so we're seeing both, Chris. We're seeing it start with, of course, average speed of answer, the 80-20 rule, maybe a 90-10 rule. Okay, we're looking at abandoned call rates to be in that, low single digits, arena area, if you will. And anything beyond that becomes a possible concern. And if anything, we've seen, and some clients that we've worked with have had, 2-minute hold as a standard SLA, and we're trying to share with them, no, that's not really, the baseline for the industry. So, what we are actually, doing quite a bit, within our environment is to say, how do we help manage that? And again, going back to this word called customer experience, or in healthcare, it's patient experience. In insurance, it's member experience, or, along the organizations along those lines. So, everybody, even at the most executive levels and down to middle management, they're all very, very sensitized and cognizant of this idea of, CX, PX, MX, if you will, and therefore, again, how can I, improve, on those metrics? So it starts there, and then beyond that, we're going into newer KPIs. Obviously, CSAT, customer satisfaction scores is a reflection. We're seeing now feedback forms everywhere you go, from a retail restaurant you go to you're making your airline reservation, and can you stay on hold for a one-question survey? So feedback, again, that's all part of this customer experience, is very big. And then the third piece, which again goes into a better, contact center, if you will, is speech and speech analytics, and of course text analytics from a chat. So we can measure very specifically now exactly what's the SAT score internally based upon measurements we're doing, and literally managing specific words that are being used within the contact center, within the customer base, and really getting, again, feedback on that. So these are very interesting times, Chris. And again, I know I'm saying this word customer experience a lot, but it's front and center, and it's going to change our industry. In fact, what we're finding, that customers that have had hunt groups or UCD groups are now going mainstream and saying, we need a better customer experience, and we need contact center. And so I think that's part of the reason why you're also seeing a rise in contact center. I think, again, all these organizations have become extremely sensitized to, again, hey, the existence of our organization could be, could happen as a result if we're not, paying attention to our customer.
Fair. Now, I just want to talk to our audience just for a second. So we are standing by live with questions. There's also a set of resources in the resource library that you can get access to about different topics that we were talking about today. But if you have a question, maybe about your needs, or a question to Steve or to Anthony or myself, please put them in the questions, and we'll try and get to them in real time. But I want to pick up on something that Steve just said. And Anthony, we were having a conversation yesterday about healthcare, and there's a lot of use cases in healthcare. But often there's terminology, there's drugs, there's things that are very specific to that business, and really all businesses. How's Google changing the game with you being able to do voice biasing and whatnot?
Yeah, this is a very important point for voice. When you train a standard model, usually there's a catalog of terms that are in that model. And if I'll take an example of healthcare that we've seen with one of our customer, Cobra. The healthcare coverage, if you take a standard model, Cobra is a snake. It's not a healthcare coverage plan. So you have to train those models to understand that when a customer calls you and says, I have Cobra insurance, I'm covered by Cobra, what does that mean? And what kind of document are you recommend?
Right.
It's not a snake removal service.
It's absolutely.
So this is exactly what you need to solve for. And we've taken that into account in our speech-to-text API and Dialogflow as well. There's a feature we released about a couple months ago called speech adaptation. Speech adaptation, what it will do is we'll take some of the terms that you provide the system and we'll bias the speech recognition model toward those terms with different weights depending on how you use it. Right. In Dialogflow, it's a one-click enablement. You just click it, it's done. Wow. What it will do automatically, we'll look at all the nodes of your Dialogflow bot. We'll look at all the entities and terms that you've put in there, and we'll bias the model at the right point when it's based on the expected answer. Right. So if there's a question where you say yes or no, it will bias toward a yes or a no depending on what you're saying. So, or a specific term, a healthcare term, or any kind of drug name, or any artist in music and entertainment. We see music, movies, actors, things like that. So the model can be biased toward those terms. So even if you don't pronounce them well, and I don't know a lot of people that can pronounce actors' name correctly, it will still find them and be able to deliver the value. So that speech adaptation is only available if you use the streaming API, the speech-to-text of Dialogflow. If you use a separate speech API, it won't work. You have to use the Dialogflow one. And in Agent Assist, it's included. You can just bias the speech-to-text API.
And just, I guess for people that might not be familiar, what would that look like before this? Like how much time are they saving? What is the process that they would have had to go through?
It would have been horrible. I mean, they would have had to pay a lot of professional services to tune models. Right. This is really either a one-click in Dialogflow or a little bit of configuration in the speech-to-text API. We support up to 5,000 hints in the speech-to-text API. So that's a big capability that you can do. It's very easy to do.
Fantastic. And really, that's the point, right? Working with partners like Genesys, we're trying to make it easy for people to adapt this technology without coding. And I think there's like 1 million developers or so behind.
Dialogflow has reached over 1 million developers on the platform last summer. It's growing really, really fast right now. It's really become the de facto NLU for creating bots right now in the market. We're very proud of it. And the emphasis over the last 18 months has been toward larger deployments in larger enterprise. We have customers like Marks Spencer in the UK has been deployed, handling millions of calls through this virtual agent through Dialogflow. We have Policy Bazaar in India, who's a marketplace for insurance that is doing upsell, selecting an insurance plan directly on a conversational IVR. And really generating a ton of money out of that. So really great implementation. So we see a lot more enterprises using Dialogflow, even though the history from 3 years ago or 4 was more of a assistant, build bots and assistant. It turned in the last year and a half into a full-on enterprise product, HIPAA compliant, PCI compliant, very rich in the security level, in how it can do fulfillment. You were talking about hitting backend systems to fulfill a request. Dialogflow has now MTLS support for those requests, so very secure. It's becoming a really enterprise-friendly and ready product.
Wow, and so what I'm hearing is like the bots are, if they're able to help you select an insurance plan, really they pay for themselves. They're like your next sales agent.
The ROI is the key question for any company looking at implementing virtual agents or Agent Assist and contact center AI in general. They'll look at the ROI. What we've seen in general, every customer, the ROI is very simple. It will come, the ROI is done in 12 to 18 months max very easily. And most of the customers we have in the enterprise will do a 3 to 5 year deal. So the ROI is way above what you would expect. So I wouldn't be worried too much about the ROI. The gains of customer satisfaction, deflection of calls and containment of calls in the virtual agent, and the improvements of your agent level of expertise, first call resolution, and satisfaction, less churn in the contact center, are all compounding into a very, very good ROI for customers.
Fantastic. So I see Steve nodding along in the background here. I'd like to call out that we also have some BuilderBot workshops that if you want to get your hands dirty on this, Genesys offers a workshop for you that you can try this out. And it takes about an hour, and we'll guide you through from the start to the finish of creating a bot in a live environment. But Steve, when people want to get started, what are the tools, where should they go to understand that?
Yeah, so what they really need to do to get started, I mean, in our approach, Chris, is that, we start with a specification, and actually even prior to that, we actually do an assessment with the client. We do a whole discovery process to find out, forgetting about technology just for a moment, because that's always a subset of where the business and the organization wants to go. So we start by really, interviewing executive teams, the CFO, the COO, the CMO, the CIO, the CEO if they're available, even the president if they're available, to get a sense of their vision and what they want to do in terms of transforming their organization. Okay, and then the technology that we look at marries back to the vision, if you will, or maybe their 3 to 5 year plan as to what their organization is looking like. Okay, so then beyond that, we do a write-up, we get confirmation on their vision, and then we translate that and transcribe that into a contact center solution. Okay, and so it starts with a specification, and so for example, chatbots, would be part of a chat mechanism. Voice bots, if you will, would be part or separate from that, from IVR, for example. So we actually have very specific terms, and then what we'll do is to engage clients in contact center, because many clients have come out of a voice-only call center environment. Many have not engaged the full omni-channel or multi-channel suite over the years. Your other channels such as, social media, and chat and email, and video, if you will. And so what's happening is, we want to engage them on all, channels, because that's really where the market's going. And so what happens is that we create 2 segments. We create required and optional features, feature sets. And interestingly, in the last 2 out of 2, once they get a demo for the vastness of what you can get from the full feature set, both, again, optional and required, they buy everything. Okay, and which is pretty cool. And actually, the price point per seat can be anywhere from 50% to even 100% higher from a basic call center. So it's like, how do we justify those costs? So part of it is definitely the AI component, as Anthony was just sharing, okay, for sure. And then, within our practice, we've actually engaged with clients on ROI in a big way. So we'll actually look at staff centralization. We will look at contact center optimization by looking at full-time equivalents, part-time equivalents. We'll look at chatbots for replacing some of, again, those peak hours, as well as front-ending those areas. And we have a client recently that has close to 1,000 contact center seats, and we showed how they can save $8 million annually just by using some of these techniques. Okay, so that's one area. And by helping to manage the staff, we're also managing licensing. Mm-hmm. Sorry, Chris, you gotta give back somewhere, So, but they're managing licensing costs, and then, believe it or not, even in the contact center, the real estate, okay, the average cubicle and the average area for an agent runs about $5,000 a year. So you start to include all of those numbers and staffing numbers, and again, introducing AI. It's again, to Anthony's exact point, payback is typically within 12 to 18 months. And again, what we really want to see is the client really transforming themselves from a basic call center, or in some cases, we walk into clients that have expanded hunt groups, something called UCD. I'm being sarcastic, of course, but interestingly, they really need to, take this omni-channel experience front and center, because if they don't engage, their competition competition will. That's what we're exactly seeing. And I think, again, one area being healthcare, it's very interesting how the whole market has shifted from very friendly, very cooperative, and not that it's not that way, but it has gone extremely competitive. So the conversation that used to be just, very casual about who your competition was, oh yeah, we'll send them over to here or there, et cetera. It's now, no, it's about, hey, I could lose a client. So one more example on ROI here is that we had a client with some double-digit abandoned call rates, across multiple contact centers and groups. And what we did was we came up with an algorithm that shared with them that the average abandoned call rate would equal a client or patient that they could potentially lose. And believe it or not, from one study that we did with a client, we found that the average outpatient appointment to the healthcare provider was valued at $540, which is, hey, that's significant money to a hospital or a practice that has a number of visits per day. So bottom line was, when we ran the numbers, the patient loss avoidance factor or customer loss avoidance factor turned out to be in excess of $40 million annually. So again, when you not just look at those, the general numbers that I just shared with you, but then you expand that by improving on your SLAs, again, using AI, as Anthony is sharing here, and as you are sharing, it's extremely compelling to your organization in terms of easily paying for everything that you're investing in.
So you said something about you've got to be where your customers are, and I think you're spot on. We're seeing that as well, that it is an omni-channel world. Our customers are in messaging apps. They're already there, and you've got to be there too. I do have a question that's come from our audience in the meantime, and Anthony, this is probably to you, which is, what is the difference between an IVR and a voice bot, and what are the benefits of having a voice bot over an IVR?
Yeah. It's a good question, because a lot of customers have IVRs today and they come to us and say, I'd like to replace my IVR with Dialogflow. Well, what does that mean really? Well, what it means is that they want to provide a more engaging experience with their customers, where it's not a rigid tree. Because a rigid tree of an IVR where you say most of the time, press 1 to do this, press 2 to do that. Well, oftentimes it's neither 1 or 2, it's 0, because I want to talk to an agent, right?
Right.
And this is happening all the time. And that rigidity is not making the customer feel heard or feel like the experience is personalized, which is a big trend we're seeing. Customers want personalized experience. And so having conversational AI instead of an IVR, where the customer could say, hey, tell us what you're calling for. And you can speak in a natural way. And with a natural voice too, we're providing those voices. We have about 187 voices to choose from. So you can have your own voice also for your brand. You'll be able to make the customer feel like they can talk to you, not follow a tree, and answer a lot of those questions that they may have that they didn't think an IVR could actually answer. Calling for this or that, and then you have follow-up questions. You keep the context. You keep that information that you're gathered from the customer, and then if there is an escalation to an agent, you would pass all that information along and not have the customer repeat. The number one frustration of people when they call a contact center? Repeating information. That's the number one frustration point. So if you can avoid that, any information that I've asked you in the conversational flow, I can pass to the agent. That's customer satisfaction increasing right there.
Oh, fantastic. So to talk a little bit about, for our Genesys customers or people that are thinking about Genesys, we've connected this technology in a very tight way with Google. And so that means that, like you said, all of that data comes across, and then we've got some other AI in the middle for our routing engine that can pick up on those customer intents and start to make a better selection on what agent that interaction should go to. And I'm using the word interaction there very specifically because for us at Genesys, we're omni-channel, whether it's voice via a traditional phone call or video or a task or a WhatsApp message or an Apple Business Chat. All of that technology can leverage our integration with Google to provide a more advanced experience. And then as it flows all the way through, all that reporting, all the things that just go with a contact center, it's a first-class integration, and it's that's pretty wonderful type of integration across all three of the Genesys product lines: Pure Engage, Pure Connect, and Pure Cloud. You can take advantage of this technology. Now, if you are evaluating this, we do have some AI assessment tools that might be helpful for you. So we noticed that a lot of people are at the early stages of understanding what their requirements are and doing that research, there's some tools out there that will really help. And you can put in your selection of what needs that you have, what technologies that you have today, and it will give you a guide on where you should go next. We're also advancing that very soon with some blueprints, and you can really just start to get a blueprint of what technology footprint that you need. So, Steve, maybe a question to you. What advice do you have for people that might be embarking on this early stage journey with AI?
Yeah, interesting question, Chris. Thanks. Yeah, so I think they really, going back to my earlier comments, I think they really have to start with some kind of internal assessment and discovery around what the values are, what the goals are for their organization, immediate as well as 2 to 5 years out, and then begin to socialize that, and then create, as you just shared, a blueprint, for their organization going forward. So that starts with that, and then really to map out, a journey as to how we can deploy these technologies, because there's just so many of them out there, from the basics of call recording and WFM, but now we're introducing AI and speech and text analytics and other engines. The plethora and the vastness of some of the feature sets can be kind of overwhelming. So what we look to do is to, build them out gradually and to do some, again, discovery with the client to find out which ones are, the largest priority first. So of course, AI being one example here, it's easy to meld into a voice-only environment or a chat-only environment without really a lot of uptick. So that's part of it too. What's the deployment cycle and what's the acceptance cycle for the agents and the supervisors to engage with these new tools, So, and then, of course, it's always about omni-channel. And interestingly, with this client that we worked with recently, we're finding that it's about the consumer that's actually asking for these kinds of tools. Mm-hmm. Okay. Of course, the traditional call center is really almost passé, for lack of a better word. It's almost ancient in today's times now, especially with all of the new tools and all of the new channels that are now available that have now gone mainstream. So really, at the end of the day, Chris, it's really about engaging with the clients, and it's about their vision, and it's about, again, leveraging these tools in order to move their organization forward.
I want to touch on the analytics piece, because
sure.
that's a very important point, and Steve, you touched on this a few times.
Mm-hmm.
Just today, we announced in the release, we announced an agent validation tool, mm-hmm. which allows you to analyze the Dialogflow bot and see where people drop off, what are the intents that are used, is there intents that are overlapping, training phrases that are confusing to the NLU model, right. And really improve your bots and your flow. When you were talking earlier, Steve, about people dropping off, you want to know if they were in an IVR or conversational IVR, where did they drop off? Should we change that? How do we optimize our bot? This tool is available today. But the other part is Agent Assist. One of the most important thing in understanding your contact center is understanding what people are saying, because as I said, 80% of those interactions are with voice. Because Agent Assist provides a live transcription of the calls, now you have the text version of those calls, and you can analyze them and do a lot of analytics around them, understanding what was said, etc. You don't have to have a second cost of doing that analysis. You don't have to record all those audio and retranscribe them in analytics tools, which is oftentimes the case when you have separate offerings with your agents and your analytics. As part of the Agent Assist, we do that transcription. You can save that transcription into a Google Cloud Storage bucket, and then process all that information right there without having the double cost of doing this analytics over the entire conversation. It's happening for you as part of the product.
And I'm glad you brought up Agent Assist again, because we've been getting a number of questions about Agent Assist and how it will show up in the desktop.
Happy to see interest.
So one of the questions is, well, how will it show up? And I guess if you're using a Genesys desktop, this is embedded inside Workspace for Pure Engage or Pure Cloud, or at the Interaction desktop in Pure Connect. And it's really very, very seamless. So you'll see the transcript that Anthony is talking about in real time. So as that voice conversation happens, the agent gets to see their transcript as well as the customer, and we will surface knowledge or actions or activities from that knowledge base. And so for the agent, it becomes really, really simple. It's just part of their environment. Do you envision extensions to Agent Assist over time?
Oh yeah, of course. And what you're pointing out is one of the key strategy of our contact center AI. We want it to be the least disruptive possible for the deployment inside our customer's contact center. We don't want you to replace your entire contact center. There's no point. If you have a Genesys deployment today, Genesys will just enable all the AI and the goodies that we're providing here for the contact center. So that was a really important strategy to work with Genesys. Obviously, contact center is GA today. That's Agent Assist, is GA today. That's new. There's a lot in our roadmap. One example, for example, is Smart Replies. Right. Smart Replies is a way for the AI to suggest responses that the agent could provide to the agent, either as support request or even upsell, cross-sell. Like you can think about coaching. There's a lot of opportunities to do smart replies to the agents.
Fantastic.
You're seeing that in Gmail a little bit when you type Gmail and you have, or your Hangout, you have your smart replies. This will be a little more than just a couple words, will be sentences. But that's a way to have corporate knowledge distilled through agents, coach agents, and make them answer.
Well, so we often hear agents can be somewhat fearful of AI. It sounds like their job just got easier.
They're just going to be better. I think it will have, and that's what we've seen so far, it will have a good impact on agent training and agent retention. So less churn. Agent training, because with the same amount of training that you do probably a week or two usually, and you put those agents in the front line, they will be coached with the AI and deliver better service much faster than before. And because of that, they'll be able to feel better in their job, obviously, because they're less yelled at and can deliver that quality to the customer and stay longer.
So we've got time for maybe one more question, and then we're going to do a very, very quick rapid-fire piece of advice. But this question is probably to you, Anthony. How does AI improve the improve after interactions to better understand intents? So I think they're talking about that feedback loop.
Yeah, this feedback loop. So in Agent Assist, for example, when there's a document suggested to the agent, if that document were useful, the agent can have a thumb up, thumb down experience. That thumb up, thumb down will retrain the model automatically to know that that document was actually relevant for the conversation that was happening, and it's keeping the entire conversation as context, not just a few words.
Wow.
So it's really retraining constantly based on the agent feedback, just by saying, yeah, this was useful, this was not useful. That's an example of training. The agent validation tool helps also better your NLU model. And if you want to add a few intents that you're missing, or you're seeing people dropping off at a certain intent, you can change the responses. Maybe you improve your fulfillment, and you can see that over time. We have versioning now in Dialogflow. That's also a new feature.
Right.
So that allows you to test different versions of the bot as well and improve. So it's very easy to get that going and improve over time.
Wonderful.
AI is supposed to learn and get better.
Yeah, and it sounds like it will, organizational memory. Okay, so Steve, final word, 30 seconds or less. What is that one piece of advice that you want our audience to walk away with today?
The one piece of advice, Chris, from my perspective is that, you know what, it's a changed world. Things have changed considerably within the last 5 years. And if you're still in a call center only environment, it's a real wake up call, to the competitive environment that we are in. And now that we're all extremely sensitized, towards customer experience. So it's really about, and those that have, some level of multi-channel, we need to go to that next level, omni-channel, and of course include, AI, as a big part of the tools going forward, because it's again front and center in everything that we're discussing here, as well as what we're seeing. There's a lot of interest from our clients across all of them. So yeah, it's an exciting time, I think, to be in the contact center environment. I think at the end of the day, we're talking about contact center growth by pretty dramatic margins over the next few years. So, if you don't have a contact center today or only have a small version, it's going to grow significantly in demand to your customers. And again, leveraging these ROI tools, that we've shared during this call, it's all about, creating a better customer experience and having a way to pay for it.
Thank you. And Anthony, 30 seconds or less, one piece of advice.
Get going. This is happening now. This is ready. I mean, there's nothing holding you back. If you want a good ROI, it's the time to start.
And why should they choose Genesys?
Well, Genesys has offering across the board, like from very tiny contact center of 4 or 5 agents in the world. And even though Dialogflow does serve the largest contact centers, we also have small deployments for little bots. So we can serve the entire scope of the market. We also now are releasing English GB as a telephony model optimized for telephony for
Fantastic.
Agent Assist. We're also releasing Australia English and Spanish and Russian all today. So
Well,
now you can do Agent Assist in those regions. That's English and Spanish already. It's pretty good coverage.
Finally, I might be understood.
You can really get started right now. There's no point waiting.
Awesome. So to our audience, thank you for attending today. There was a great set of tools. I'd really like to thank you, Anthony. Thank you, Steve, for being wonderful guests today. If you would like to get in touch with one of your Genesys account reps or Google account reps, please do so. We've got test experiences, proof of concepts, as well as those assessment tools that you can access right now within the webinar. So from us, see you next time. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.